Welcome back to our broadcast house. I'm Armstrong Williams, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, every day millions of Americans receive suspicious phone calls. How well do I know? Emails and texts. Messages that are designed to steal their money. And, you know, most of them imagine that these scams are carried out willingly by criminals just sitting comfortably behind computers. But what if many of those people are victims themselves? What if? Today, documentary takes us inside one of the world's fastest growing criminal enterprises, where human trafficking, cybercrime, and modern day slavery, yes, modern day slavery intersect. It is a powerful reminder that behind many online scams are really human beings trapped in unimaginable circumstances. This is not simply a story about crime. It really is a story about freedom, resilience, and redemption. So joining me is award-winning filmmaker, Timothy Blackwood. Welcome to the broadcast house. You know, what first led you, Timothy, to investigate the hidden world of scam, compounds, and human trafficking?
I have a colleague named Matthew Friedman, and he runs the Mekong Club in Hong Kong, and he's an anti-human trafficking expert, and he turned me on to the story.
Oh, really? You know, Americans like us, we often assume scammers are just simply criminals. I mean, how did your research actually challenge and actually change that perception?
Well, the story that I tell is about Gideon Wezes, and he was trafficked and scammed himself, tricked into a scam center.
Explain traffic.
Yeah, so he meets a man, he's running an internet cafe, and he's helping to support his family by running this internet cafe. He's from Uganda, from a village just outside of Kampala. And there's a man that comes in and he says, "Hey, you speak English well, and also you're good at computers. I could get you a job and you could make $1,200 a month. That's a lot of money. And you just have to go to Thailand. You're gonna work in a grocery store doing data entry. So you make a lot of money, the job will be easy, you'll get to travel." And Gideon, through a series of different events, he's able to get a plane ticket, it's a huge sum of money, and he flies over to Bangkok. But instead of being taken to a company where he's gonna do data entry, he's abducted, he's tricked, and he's taken across the border to Myanmar. And that's when he discovers he's gonna be locked up in a room with dozens and dozens of other people in a compound with thousands of people who are enslaved to scam.
How long was he held against his will before he got his freedom back?
It was about around half a year.
That's a long time, even
Yeah.
for me. You know, let me just say this before we continue our conversation.
Sure.
We'd like to show you a brief excerpt from Scam Slave, from Hell to Home. This powerful scene actually reveals a side of online fraud that few people have ever seen, a world where many of those behind the screens are victims themselves, as Timothy has laid out. Take a look.
I come from a family with almost 11 children. This customer introduced me to an opportunity for a job in Thailand. I'm the hope in my family right now. This guy told me, "You are in Myanmar. You are here to scam."
They're abused.
Oh yeah, big time, we can talk about that.
Now, what responsibility do governments, technology companies, Timothy, and financial institutions have in disrupting these international criminal networks? And I also sense from watching just that clip that these people are abused as well.
Abused and tortured. I mean, they're working 17-hour days. The conditions are horrible. And if you refuse to scam, you can be killed. You could be, you know, we get into this in the film, but he gets hung up on chains, suspended, and he's put in this this area along with others for days with no food or drink. They gave him urine to drink, actually. It's horrible. I mean, they come in and they electrocute the people that have been abducted to scam.
Now, I want to clarify something.
Yes.
I don't, I get the point that many of these people are victims themselves, but
Yes.
not all of them are victims.
Not all are victims. Some people go with this, may go willingly or with a suspicion that they're going to do it, but they don't understand the conditions that they're going to be in, right? Like once you are there, they don't realize going there that they're going to be enslaved. So they're also tricked. It's not, some people may have gone knowingly that they would be dishonest to people and, be involved in work that is not honest work. But most of the people that are there are people that are trafficked.
Fair point. So during filming, what moment affected you personally more than any other?
Well, I got to Uganda and I saw the conditions that people were living in, which were extremely modest. Lots of children running around without shoes and people living in real poverty. And it made me feel extremely sad for Gideon, the subject of my film, that he would go with the hope of his family to help provide money for them, and then he would end up being enslaved and tortured. And after all of that, even after his rescue coming home, he comes back with less than what he went with, because they had to spend so much money to get him to the trip to Thailand.
And that's typical.
Yeah.
It's not unusual. Why was it important that this documentary end with hope and redemption rather than simply exposing what I would consider to be just absolute evil?
Because there is also goodness in the world. I don't think that evil should have the final word. I don't want people to walk away from this thinking that this is a topic or a subject matter that we can't confront and that it's just useless. You've got people running these enterprises that are extremely powerful. So you could say, well, what's the point? It's halfway across the world. Why do we do anything about it? But because we can. So I think we need to instill hope in people that it is possible to change this.
But your film exposes an international criminal network that spans multiple countries. I mean, what surprised you most about just how organized and sophisticated these enterprises are?
Well, from experts I talked to, a lot of these individuals are actually hiding their money in the States. So these are criminal syndicates, largely Chinese crime syndicates. But I mean, the amount of money that's being brought in is like tens of billions of dollars. This is a huge amount of money
It's an
annually.
industry.
Huge industry.
Here's what's interesting. I was just thinking about this. Artificial intelligence is making scams increasingly convincing. How concerned should we be about, from your experience, the future of cyber not only enabling human trafficking, but protecting them?
We should be extremely concerned about this. I think we're really behind the ball. Like AI excels with the information that it has, right? And so everything that, your email, your phone contacts, those I consider to be all databases. And if those databases get breached and they're run through AI, there's massive opportunity to extort people and to, do extremely nefarious acts. So I think that we have to secure our own digital footprints more and we have to do a much better job of that.
For viewers who want to help, let's say, what practical steps can individuals take to protect themselves while also supporting the kind of work that you're involved in and other filmmakers?
Well, I think that one thing people can do to protect themselves is not be as involved online, not have a lot of their personal information online or in databases, even the cloud. That's one thing.
You know, this organizing and fighting it reminds me of a form of modern day slavery. And it's fascinating. I'm always curious as to what conversations do you hope lawmakers and international leaders begin after watching this documentary? What kind of impact can it actually have?
Oh, I think it can have a massive impact. First, with public awareness, for one, because we get into the specifics of how people get scammed through this pig butchering process, right? So I think education is one. I think we need to radically across the nation be talking about this, and people need to be educated on the ways of which there's vast scamming happening in America. It's not even a part of our national conversation. This is a national security problem, massive. And we've done basically nothing at the national scale to combat this. And people's 401ks are being taken, everything that they've saved. You know, this is a huge, huge problem.
It's a crisis.
It's a crisis. It's a crisis we're not talking about.
How does someone watch your film?
How do they watch it?
Yes.
It's going to be available online. We're playing some film festivals. Right now, we just got accepted to an Oscar qualifying film festival. So we're going to do the film festival circuit, and then we'll be releasing it online. The film's called Scam Slave from Hell to Home. And Google Scam Slave from Hell to Home, and you will be in touch about the digital release.
Listen, a pleasure having you join us. We'll be right back after this short commercial break and much more. It's a whole hour of filmmakers. Timothy is the man.
Thank you.
And we'll be back. You know, few figures in American history have become more legendary than Billy the Kid. And for generations, Hollywood, historians, and popular culture have turned him into an American icon, but legends often obscure the truth, unfortunately, Dugan. But anyhow, as we celebrate our 250th anniversary, perhaps this is the perfect time to ask, why are we so fascinated with outlaws? And we are, and whether they myths we embrace tell us more about ourselves than the people we actually celebrate. Joining me now is filmmaker Dugan Bridges. Dugan, welcome to the broadcast. He's a filmmaker, Blackwater Draw, the making of Billy the Kid. Why did you choose Billy the Kid?
Well, it started with a book about Blackwater Draw, written by Dave Turk and Steve Cedarwall, who was an investigator, and he happened to retire in New Mexico. He was like a police cop, stuff like that. And in his retirement, he decided to solve cold cases of the Old West. And so in Lincoln County, they were able to get access for the very first time to a property that was a ranch. And on that ranch, the murders of Morton and Baker had happened with the regulators. And so he found, and I saw it myself, like he found, you know, gun caps from the 1800s that could have been from Billy the Kid, and stuff like that. That's what got my attention.
So what surprised you most as you separated historical fact from the mythology surrounding Billy the Kid?
Well, the thing that surprised me that captured me was that I had never seen in any of the previous movies, because there's 5 or 6 movies on Billy the Kid. I had no idea that Billy the Kid wore a badge at one point.
Yes.
He was actually under the law. He was deputized, even as a teenager, with the regulators. And so that shocked me, because, you know, I just thought he was completely a vagabond and killing people in cold blood. Lawless and famous for his escapes, you know, and escaping everything. I didn't realize that there was, with Blackwater Draw, there's actually this story of him kind of seeking justice in the beginning that led to him becoming an outlaw.
Vigilante. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, why has American culture, Dugan, continued to romanticize outlaws for more than a century?
That's a great question. I think there's something about the American spirit where it was like America was born out of fighting against a greater power in England, that felt constricting to us. So just even in our origin story. And so with that, I think with Americans, they gravitate towards anyone who feels like they're fighting against
the underdog.
The underdog, fighting against the man, fighting against corruption.
As we did with Timothy and his movie, his film, we're going to pause for just a moment, and we just want to show our viewers a scene from Blackwater Draw, the making of Billy the Kid. It captures both the mystery and mythology that have surrounded one of America's most enduring legends. Let's take a look.
Aaron Barry is at Blackwater.
You Dolan's men are coming. Brady's Law right behind them.
They're gonna take them two back to Lincoln. They're gonna hang us all.
A lucky shot, I guess.
You're telling me flat out that you pulled the trigger, huh? I don't hear that every day.
Shot my friend for no reason.
We get any justice for that?
I'll give him some.
Man, huh? You're a kid, Billy. Killing a man don't make you one.
Well, how's about killing two?
What really hits home with me is that your film also highlights the role of journalists and media in shaping Billy the Legend. What parallel, Dugan, do you see with today's media landscape?
So, to give a little, I guess, reference around what the story is that I would say something that is kind of different on my approach in telling the story is that it is through the eyes of a journalist, right? So we have a guy from the Mesilla Independent, a small newspaper, comes into town because these murders are going on. This murder has happened at Blackwater Draw. And then he kind of watches the Lincoln County War unfold, where the regulators kill the people from Dolan's gang, and Dolan's gang fights back. And so he's trying to piece together the truth because the Santa Fe Ring owns the state newspaper. That is the biggest newspaper that's also linked to the national media. And so they are on the Dolan side, which want to kill the regulators. And so he, as an independent journalist, is trying to find the truth, knowing that it's probably somewhere in the middle, in the gray, between what he's being told on both sides. And it's based off of a historical figure that it's not in this film, but in the long run, that reporter goes on to represent Billy the Kid in the court of law once Billy kills Sheriff Brady. So it was an interesting.
That introduces another point. Is Billy the Kid ultimately remembered because of who he was, or because of the story America wanted to tell?
Exactly. So the penny western is, so basically like America was kind of becoming literate at that point in history, and the newspaper had become a thing, and people want to be able to read the newspaper. And so the penny westerns were these stories coming out of the newspapers, and so they were looking for material. And the East Coast fell in love with all these stories from the West, which is why you get all these other names, right? Like Wild Bill Hickok and stuff like that. But Billy was like the only teenager, and he was a teenager when this war broke out, which was also, I think, captured the minds of Americans, someone young, charismatic, and he was charismatic. He even had a style to himself, like he dressed with extra scarves and a bowling hat, to try and stand out. So at some point he kind of realized.
So are you challenging Billy today?
I'm trying to look the part, if I'm gonna make a Western,
I figured as much. I figured it when I first saw you, but so as our nation's marks 250 years of history, Dugan, What lessons should Americans take away from revisiting the chapters of the Old West?
We definitely have something to learn because I think the real reason that when we went out there and we filmed in New Mexico, in Lincoln, where it all happened, it was crazy to see how many people were still so loyal to Billy the Kid. And it was because they felt like he was fighting for them against a larger kind of corrupt
like the deep state today.
The deep state.
The deep state.
And so even though he
Yes,
was
yes.
an enemy of the law, he was a hero of the people. And you're seeing that, I feel like, today.
Sort
you
of
know?
like Trump is our Billy the Kid.
What's that?
Trump is like our Billy the Kid.
I mean, there's a lot of different people you could.
There's a lot of similarity.
You could put in that spot. And you know, it's that, like you said, vigilante violence, when people feel like they don't have a way to, you know, go through the court system and see justice.
Somebody fighting for them.
They take stuff into their own hands, you know, and we don't want to go that
Why
route.
do you think audiences sort of continue to, and I think you touched on this, stories from the American frontier generation after generation?
I think that in part, there's a couple reasons why they endure. The Old West is still kind of untouched. We were able to find casings, you know, from the 1800s in the ground. Lincoln County has not been built on, but it's also, we admire their bravery. I think Americans, you know, love an underdog story where someone's brave and they're able to write their own narrative and not let the powers that be write it for them. And that's something that I think Billy definitely did.
You know, I was sitting here smiling because, you know, for the last 30 years, my family, we all have gone overseas on vacation. But this year, they want to go to the Old West, Wyoming. So we are going to Montana. So it sort of fits in with your narrative about Billy the Kid. You know, during your research, did you discover, any myths about Billy the Kid that even historians commonly sort of misunderstand?
I didn't realize that his death is kind of shrouded in mystery. This is honestly the biggest legend about him, because a lot of the other things really happened, like his death-defying escapes, killing 2 deputies and getting out of jail and all that really did happen. But his death, well, so Pat Garrett famously killed him in the middle of the night, but didn't see him, but was told that was him, right? And Pat Garrett was actually a friend of Billy. So there's definitely a conspiracy theory that Pat helped Billy fake his own death. And this legend goes so far as to even reach England, which I didn't realize. So this whole conflict started because Billy's boss was murdered, John Tunstall, and he was English, immigrated from England. So that family has a headstone with Billy the Kid's name on it, and they claim Billy came and lived with them after his death and got married and lived a whole life. So that's a pretty cool legend.
You know, I wonder what role does documentary filming play in correcting sort of these historical misconceptions while still telling an engaging story as well?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a very popular news source for the next generation, because it gives you the time to really look through both sides and find the truth.
Investigative research.
Yeah, and then give you an hour, you know, to entertain yourself and learn something new. It's a great way to learn and do news.
What is the film runtime?
This is only 15 minutes. With everything that I know, with everything we've talked about,
it deserves. We get warmed up, man.
I know. I want it to be feature length. It deserves to be, but it's with everything I've talked about, it's only capturing that one moment in time of the Blackwater Draw murders.
Is that because of the public's attention span?
No, it's not.
Oh,
no,
good.
it's budgetary constraints.
Budgetary. I didn't want to say that. 15 minutes. Oh my goodness, like a teaser.
It is. You're right. It's a teaser. That's what I'm hoping to use it as, to raise money and make a larger piece.
Dugan, thank you.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
bringing us back, Billy the Kid. Thank you for joining us. And I'm Armstrong Williams. It gets better. We'll be back. Don't go away. You know, I spent time in Moscow, so I've met many Natalias. That's a very popular name in Russia. So you spent the first 6 years of your life in Russia. But you know, Natalia, few issues have reshaped American life more than education, free speech, and the relationship between parents and government. Okay, so the last several years forced Americans to sort of reconsider fundamental questions about civil liberties, public education, and whether disagreement is still welcome in a democratic society. So your documentary, which is fascinating, follows one woman who challenged powerful political institutions and refused to be intimidated. You could have been talking about yourself, but let me welcome Natalia to the set. But anyhow, uncancelable is of it. You just can't be canceled. So why do you believe Maud Marian, I think that's the name, Maud Marian, story represented something much larger than one political campaign?
Well, thank you for having me,
My
first
pleasure.
of all. Yes,
Yeah.
Maud Marin, she's actually a friend of mine, and we met in New York City during the school closures at the very first school reopening rally during COVID. The reason I think that her story is important is because I think when you tell heroic stories of people who refuse to back down, they become force multipliers. One person can inspire millions, and those stories are not being told now. And to me, Maud's story may seem small in a big city, but actually, you know, I talk to people all over the country who are like, I've heard of Maud, wow, she's an amazing person. And it's like she's the most unfamous, famous person that there is, and that's exactly whose story needs to be told.
But but have the pandemic years permanently changed the relationship between parents and public education?
Well, I think the last 6 years have, for sure. Most parents I know, and I was a public school parent for many years. I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old now, who neither of whom are in a public school anymore. We just
Homeschool?
No. No, I'm not a homeschooler. One goes to a Hebrew classical school, and the other one goes to a Catholic school. So anything but public at this point. Yeah, of course it has, because I think it really kind of like opened up like this can of worms. Like, if they're doing this, what else are they doing? And I think during the school closures, parents really didn't have a seat at the table. During the pandemic, we realized it didn't matter how much science we brought to the table, we could not get schools reopened. So who was actually, the puppet master? And what I found, I mean, I made another documentary before this one, Maud Marin is in that too, so you could say she's my muse, is that the teachers' unions and politicians and bureaucrats really had all the power, and parents didn't. So I think it really awakened a lot of parents like Maud, like me.
No, as I did with Timothy and Dugan, we're going to show a clip from Uncancelable, which illustrates the personal challenges that often come with standing up for deeply held convictions. I believe that a person with courage and conviction makes a majority. So this is a story that asks important questions about that courage, about free expression and democracy. So let's take a watch.
Maud Marin, I really want to tell you, I would like you to see her now. 50 years from now, there will be movies made about this time. And Maud, I have a feeling you're not going to be a hero. Thanks.
Maud Marin, regardless of your opinions or viewpoints on any topic, rolling your eyes at a student is unacceptable. The least you can do as representative is fix your face.
I think this marks 15 months of protesting a resolution that asked for a conversation. It was content neutral. It said we should have a conversation about biological males and female sports. Biological sex is binary.
If you want to speak, please, I welcome you. Please, sign up.
And the fact that this resolution to rescind is doing nothing but creating an unsafe and hostile environment for young women who actually do want to have the conversation that I asked for, it's really ugly, and you should all be ashamed of yourself for engaging in it.
Wow. So is America becoming less tolerant of different viewpoints? Or are we simply witnessing more vigorous public debate?
Well, I think we're not witnessing more vigorous public debate, because I think what we're seeing is a lot of internet stuff, like, you know, the social media really is built on these algorithms that create a lot of acrimony. It's not substantial conversation.
The worst common denominator.
The worst. And I mean, that's what gets amplified. You see people putting out rage bait, and it goes viral, and you're incentivized to do it. Many of them are bots. Thank God for, you know, Twitter, and you can now like click and see where the account is based, and it's fun to see other people like call them out. But I don't think we're having enough meaningful debate. And actually, I'm somebody who talks to people everywhere, whether it's online at Trader Joe's or, you know, on the airplane. If somebody's unlucky enough to sit next to me, they're going to get a talking to. And I find that people have more in common than we are being led to believe. People like Maude have friends on both sides of the aisle, and that's something that I witnessed firsthand, because when I met her at the very first rally, I was a progressive Democrat in New York City, and I was told to stay away from her. I said they said she's too controversial. You know, you don't want to be associated with Maude Marin. And at first I was just like, okay, let me watch this person. And you watch her and you see everything she's saying is common sense. And I don't think it can be described in partisan terms. I feel like we're living in a very post-partisan environment, and I think Maude is the emblem of that.
What surprised you most, Natalia, while documenting the campaign and its public reaction?
Just how hard it is, and how little of a fight the New York Republicans put up. You know, they kind of let Alvin Bragg have it. You know, we've been so, you know, focused on the Soros money going into the Bragg campaign and the progressive DAs, but the Republican Party could do a lot more in these, you know, blue areas where I feel like
what should they do more?
Creative, like advertising, you know, mobilizing, funding these campaigns. Maude had a hell of a time trying to get funding for her campaign. You would think that as a common sense former public defender who supported Bernie Sanders, she's really a nonpartisan person. She was running on a Republican ticket only because that was really what was available to her at that time. But, you know, she had no support. I think that we need to, you know, really get up and fight. And really, there is no significant Republican Party in New York City.
What do you hope viewers from every political perspective take away after watching your film?
I hope they have the courage to speak up, because all of the issues that Maude talks about are common sense issues. They're things that our parents and grandparents knew, you know, and had their moral compasses like set to the right dial. And I feel like, you know, with social media, AI, all of the hype, we have forgotten much of the common sense ancestral knowledge, which really guides us as humans.
You know, it's interesting because throughout the film, you actually see people willing to risk reputations and careers, not just reputations, their careers. What gives ordinary citizens that little extra where they become extraordinary to speak out when, let's say, the pressure to remain silent is much easier, much more comfortable, but the ability to speak out is the greater good?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think there are common things that I have identified. One is strong family values and a history, you know, in the family of, you know, sitting at the dinner table, having these difficult conversations and understanding how important it is to talk about things, having values being passed down from parents intergenerationally. I've also, and I say this as a non-religious person, I do see that people who have a faith in God have a certain, you know, passion and calling.
Purpose.
Yes. And faith. In some ways, I envy them.
And direction.
I don't necessarily always have that, but I find them very inspiring, and I aspire to be more like them.
You know, I'm glad you injected yourself in that question because I was wondering, has this documenting this story changed your own perspective on civic engagement and local government?
Well, yes, Maud has actually.
Yes.
And that's why it was so compelling to tell her story. This is someone who is humble and didn't go into this for the wrong reasons. It wasn't about self-aggrandizing. It was about making the world a better place for her children and their friends, not just her own children, everyone's children. And I think I find that inspiring, and that's one of the reasons why I've done what I've done, and made the films and also continue to speak out. I think that the costs of not speaking out are much greater than speaking out.
But something that definitely emanates from you, because I see the light in your eyes and it shines, is that you believe there's an importance in restoring this civil dialogue and this trust among Americans who strongly disagree with one another. You can be disagreeable, but you can be civil and respectful and tolerant.
Yeah, and that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Those are the models we want to present our children with. They should be able to, reach across the aisle and, hold hands. I know that's a kumbaya moment, but the reality is I grew up in the 80s, right? And my parents were, we came from the Soviet Union in 1977 to New York City. Bad shape, but my parents were always super grateful, never ever spoke badly about the United States, and are super conservative, as most people who emigrate from totalitarian countries are. I went to schools where most people were Democrats. I was, naive enough to say, oh, I would vote for Reagan, and it was like, oh my God. But, it never got so acrimonious. The stakes were not that high.
Vicious.
It was never vicious.
Yeah.
They were they were already kind of like mean to me because I was the weird, immigrant who didn't speak English. But, we survived those things, and
But
it makes
you
us stronger. You evolve, you get
Yes.
stronger. But I can't imagine what it would be like today if I went into a school in first grade, in a public school in New York City, and I told people that I was a Trump supporter. What would happen to that child?
That's the question that is often, you don't have to debate it, you can see it firsthand. Yeah. This is why you decided to do your film.
Yep.
This is the reason. And thank you for doing this film, and thank you for joining us. Much more when we come back on Armstrong. Are you enjoying this as much as I am? I hope so, but I know you are. We'll be back. Okay. And welcome back to the broadcast. War is often discussed through military strategy, diplomacy, geopolitics. But yet behind every conflict are fathers, mothers, children, soldiers, and hostages whose lives are forever changed, forever. Today, the documentary that Hannah has her DNA all over tells the remarkable story of one of Israel's most daring hostage rescue missions and reminds us that courage and sacrifice are often found in the most desperate circumstance, most desperate. And so, regardless of where one stands politically, every human life matters, and every hostage deserves to come home. We were in Israel. We covered that story. We went to where they lost their lives. We were there where the surprise attack took place. We were there with the kids who lost their parents, who are still traumatized, and they go through this mental health healing. So I relate to this so well. Hannah Puder, filmmaker, Operations R9. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I don't even have to ask you what inspired you to do the story of Operation R9 and why you believe this documentation is necessary now. But after speaking with those directly involved, what did you learn about the emotional and human costs of hostage rescue operations?
So my documentary, Operation Arnon, comes out of October 7. And after October 7, there were 251 hostages taken into Gaza. And of course, the biggest thing was, how do we bring those hostages home? There's only really two ways to bring hostages home. It's either a negotiation, which wasn't initially successful for all the hostages, or a military extraction. And so Operation Arnon is the story of one of the only successful hostage extractions during the Gaza war. And so Operation Arnon covers the soldiers on the ground, their perspective and their story throughout that operation. And something that I was very inspired at is, you know, after getting to speak to the IDF members and the special operators who were on the ground in this operation, they don't necessarily view themselves as anything special, but they really had a incredible sense of duty and responsibility, that every single life mattered, and that no matter the cost, they knew they had to bring those hostages home in that operation. And it was just a significant display of selfishness and willing to commit to anything necessary to achieve that mission.
How much time did you spend in Israel?
I went on 2 different trips for this film, and it was about a total of 2 weeks, about 1 week each trip.
Yeah, you know, our excerpt, of course, with what we did with Natalia, what we did with Doug, and what we did with Timothy, we got to do with Hannah, is from Operation Arnon. And it reminds us, and this is important, that behind every headline are real people facing impossible decisions. I mean, and this scene captures both the danger and the extraordinary courage at the heart of this remarkable story. So let's take a look.
When you talk about how to release a hostage militarily, you need to be 99% sure that you can go in and actually get the hostage alive.
Every Hamas fighter with a weapon, they were out on the streets firing at full capacity.
It was like rescuing people from hell.
You know, I like the fact that your film focused on individuals rather than politics. Why did you make that decision, and why was that so important?
So I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is a huge military town. And I know a lot of soldiers, military personnel who do this type of operations for the United States. And so when I heard about this initial operation, you know, trying to figure out how you want to tell that story, I knew that there was a perspective that wasn't being told, especially if you just watch the headlines, as you mentioned. You know, every single soldier in the military has a purpose and a cause for why he's there, for what he's doing. And I knew at an operation of this stakes, the story behind what these operators did was very significant, and especially for Arnon Zamora, who was one of the lead Yamam operators there. It's the unit that actually goes in, does the tactical on-the-ground counterterrorism combat in Israel. And he was one of the leaders in the operation, was the first to breach the door in one of the houses where the hostages were held. And due to the heavy fire and some surprise terrorists they did not know were there, was unfortunately killed in that operation. And so I also wanted to make sure that his background, his story would be remembered, and got to interview his parents, who also got to share about their son and his bravery on that day.
Wow. You know, in today's polarized environment, Hannah, what do you hope audiences from every viewpoint will take away from your film?
You know, I think the political situation in Israel, while it's complex, there are heroes all over the story. And to just simply take the news or whatever you see on social media and take it for exactly what it is, and just believe it without investigating, without hearing a different perspective, I would encourage people to do their own research and to look beyond just a headline and to find out if there is more there, because often there is. There's a different side of this story.
You know, for me, loyalty is so important. Betrayal is something that I just don't handle very well. And one of the things that really shocked me when we were in Israel is how the people who worked in the homes, the people in the kitchen, took care of the kids, took care of the garden, took care of the farms, have been working with Hamas for over a year, telling them every nook and cranny about every home,
Yes.
to go know exactly where to go, knowing exactly where their safe house was, and to just go in and how they could destroy them quickly. It was such a betrayal, and you've never heard that in the mainstream media. The people that they really put their trust in, when the people in their own land turned their backs on them, they gave them their trust and how they betrayed them.
Yeah, it's incredible. When you actually go to Israel and you meet the people that were on the ground, and as you mentioned earlier, you know, what was it like to meet the soldiers? I mean, it's an incredible experience because, you know, to your point, you don't hear that perspective. You don't hear the full story of what actually went on. And when you think of the brutal attacks of October 7 and how these hostages were tortured by Hamas, how that could possibly be justified. You know, it's so inhumane.
And how they could go through the communities so quickly and know which houses.
Yes.
Because of the betrayal.
Yes.
It answers a lot of questions. You know, throughout the documentary, hope remains a central theme. So why do you believe hope is essential even amid war and unimaginable loss and just chaos?
Hope really is the quintessential theme throughout the Jewish people. I mean, for literally centuries, they have always struggled and fought for survival, and hope has been the one thing that they have always held on to. And I think that's a great lesson for everyone, you know, for whatever you're facing, for wherever you see your nation or whatever change you want to make in the world around you, you know, holding on to hope, to continue to fight for that result that you want. It's so important.
So what happened to you when you finally went? It was not really a cemetery, it was a memorial where everyone had their poster, had told their story, exactly what they were doing at the moment, had all their pictures. What did that do to you? It was just really
It was a real honor.
Yeah.
You know, it really was. The most impactful interview that I did was with Ruthie and Reuven Zamora, Arnon Zamora's parents, the soldier who unfortunately fell. And it was funny because when I went over there, I didn't even know I was going to get that interview. And I happened to get their contact while I was there. I called them. I said, this is crazy. I'm a filmmaker from the United States. Can I do an interview with you tomorrow? And they said yes, and I was blown away. And they welcomed me into their house, and Ruthie just sat me down and just began to share her heart. And I was absolutely taken aback because I realized very quickly I had a responsibility and I was being trusted with something very precious, the story of their son. And so I felt a great responsibility to make sure that came through in the film.
You know, your film also highlights extraordinary acts of courage. For you, what qualifies, what qualities do you observe in those that were involved that inspired you personally?
There was a great sense of humility, which I was also surprised at. You know, it was very much, this is my duty, this is what I do, I'm nothing extraordinary, it just needs to be done. And also a determination that the bad guys aren't going to win. You know, it doesn't matter how much Hamas attacks, they are going to fight back, they are going to defend their families, they're going to do what they have to do to survive.
So before our time is up here, how did you balance in 1 minute historical accuracy with the emotional storytelling needed to help audiences really connect with the people involved?
Well, the film not only has on-the-ground interviews with the operators, but there are also some military experts that share more of the historical context to get the viewer in the mindset of that operation. So if someone wants to watch the film, they can watch it. You can go on to PalladiumPictures.com, and it's also streaming on Real Clear Politics on their YouTube and their website as well.
Did your production team face any challenges emotionally and unexpected while you were there?
Oh, it was crazy.
I bet it was.
It was absolutely crazy because when I was there, it was just 10 days after the peace deal. So the country was all over the place, and J.D. Vance landed the day we were there to film.
Oh, the airport
so there were tons of things to dance around logistically.
Yeah, you know, listen, and yet they are never at peace. A siren can sound, they stop everything at a moment's notice and go to the bomb shelters. And yet they accept that way of life.
Yes. Yes, they accept it because, as you mentioned earlier, you know, they're holding on to that hope for their family, for future generations.
So, you know, I wish all of you well. I cannot thank Timothy, Dugan, Natalia, and Hannah enough for this filmmaking. I'm more excited than you are. How about that? And I don't get excited. But I think this is wonderful. I wish you well. And again, can you tell our audience how they can actually watch and see these films?
Yes, all the films they can watch on PalladiumPictures.com. They'll be able to find a link. And some of the films are already streaming on Real Clear Politics.
Palladium Films. That's
Yes.
Palladium, Palladium Films. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Armstrong Williams.